Okay, we're here today with Kevin Koskella. Kevin, thanks for joining me on this interview.
It's great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So you and I connected on the DC forum, which is a entrepreneurship forum, and we've been following each other for a while. And I thought it was really cool when you told me about your business, and I said, well, if this is what you're doing, I think this would be that learning and understanding how your process works and what you do at Work Hero would be awesome for the people in the agency course community. So that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was actually just looking for information on agencies, and then somebody in the DC referred me to you, and then I saw your site that you're basically that's what you do. So it was a perfect person to contact. So
Yeah, so it hit us at the right time too, because I was actually just having a conversation with my wife about web design and how, there's all these companies out there that need web design and web development services or just design services or things that are not enough. They don't have enough resources or need to hire somebody full time, but they just want somebody they know that can get the job done. They want their go-to resource because a lot of times business owners are focused on running a business and the website is just something they either take for granted or they don't really know exactly how they want to pull it together. And so when you talked about what you provide and at the price point that it is, I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about how do you provide this quality service at the price point you do, and then how do people that are in the community, is there an opportunity for them to do something similar with their service or to partner up with you when they don't want to provide web development services as well?
yeah, absolutely. And so just to give a little more background about how I ended up contacting you, one thing that happened with us is that agency owners started to come to us and sign up for our service. And that's when it triggered me. I was like, oh, this is actually like a great fit for what we do. Because before we were kind of targeting like our marketing, we were targeting like coaches and people like service providers and things like that. But then when agency owners and even web developers were coming to us, it was like, this seems like a much better fit for us. So that's how we ended up talking. And this is, yeah, hopefully I can provide some, you know, uh, detailed information that people can take that are agency owners right now that they can use for themselves, or at least pick up a few tips here.
Yeah, for sure. And so you prepared a presentation for us, which we're going to get to in just a minute here. But I love what you're talking about, and you started off pretty solid, and you say it's a build buy scenario for most companies, right? Do you want to build this competency yourself, or do you want to buy it and have somebody else do it for you? And then is there value in providing this to clients, or do you just want to have a trusted partner that you can work with? And in my decade plus of working in agencies, I think there's a case to be made for both, and it's very situational. And so we're going to get the education here as to how you do this and what you do. And then I'm going to stick around afterwards and we're going to ask you a bunch of questions about it.
Cool, sounds good.
Okay, so let's get into Kevin's presentation, and I'll see you back here in about 20 minutes when we're wrapped up, and you can see me ask Kevin some pressing questions. I'm going to grill him a little bit about what we talked about in the presentation.
Hi, my name is Kevin Koskella, and I'm the founder of Work Hero. We are a subscription-based service that handles annoying WordPress technical and design tasks for businesses. And today I'm going to talk about our processes and get into that in detail. And hopefully I will be able to help you as an agency owner in simplifying your own processes and getting to something that really works so that you can take the stress out of the way you run your business currently. And I wanted to thank Jeff for having me on to be able to talk about this. And yeah, so I hope that you get a lot out of this. It's going to be about 20 minutes. So hang in there, take some notes, and we'll have a Q&A after. And so I'm going to talk, before I get into the process stuff, I'm going to talk a little bit about our business Work Hero. So the site is useworkhero.com, and we do WordPress design and marketing automation tasks that are done for you. Quick, friendly turnaround, 1 monthly fee, no contracts, and cancel at any time. And let's go to that next slide. So in building any business online, you face some of the same struggles. And that is, how can you be an expert or even be good at everything? So that applies to any business. So where is the time to do all that needs to be done? Where's that time? Where to go? So you're hurting your business by trying to be a do-it-yourselfer, and it takes time away from what you're good at. and it also takes time away from the money producing activities. So that's a big problem. And you can't afford to do it yourself, even if you love figuring out each step of the way. So I think that applies a lot to people that are running agencies, because there's so many things that you can get wrapped up in and start thinking, well, if I could just do this myself, it'll, once I get it done, then everything will be great. But then of course, this just happens over and over, and you end up wasting a lot of time, sinking a lot of time. So multitasking is hurting your brain, and every time you switch what you're doing, you have to refocus, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to forget things. So people go, I'm going to hire a VA to handle all this stuff, or maybe several VAs. Problems with that, it takes a lot of time to manage a VA for all the tasks you have, and you have to train them on everything you do. VAs quit or stop performing, and then you have to go through the firing and hiring process, which is a headache and a time sink. And when you grow, you may have to hire a VA to manage your VAs, and it gets a little bit messy. So then there's automation tools. Most are billed as easy, but typically are not. And then it takes time to learn and set up, and you end up paying monthly for each tool. And as you probably know, this adds up quickly. So enter Work.Hero, and we have a flowchart that kind of explains our processes. So before you get overwhelmed by all the arrows and boxes and everything, bubbles, we're going to start here in the middle at the website, useworkhero.com. So the way this is set up is to the right of this. So if you start here, to the right of this is our customer process. So the customer comes in, somebody comes in to the site and then becomes a customer. They fill out a Typeform, and then that information on the Typeform, which is like their task, their login details and all that goes to Intercom and our Google Sheets. So then that information is accessible to our team members, which we call heroes. And that also is available on Slack. So we get all that information there. Each time a customer submits a task, they get assigned a hero, and then they work directly with that hero. So, and then off to the left, so coming in here, let's go left. So this is our billing process, our how we do the money. So we use the Woocommerce plugin, and that allows us to work with this is a shopping cart, and so we can do things like set up free trials and make sure people are activated, and then pause people's subscription if that's needed. And then Stripe is our credit card processing, and then that's where we make the money. So the money comes in here, and then we spend our marketing dollars on events, Facebook ads, and podcasts. So let's start with just this here, this kind of traffic generation. So Facebook ads, podcasts, and events. These are the main ways that we're getting people to the website with paid ads, with paying for it. So I've paid, so not just Facebook ads, but also paid to be on podcasts, and then going to events. And this all costs money. The thing that I didn't list on here is referrals, which is how we get most of our leads, most of our business. But just as far as where the marketing dollars are going, there it is. So back to the flowchart. So starting here, let's start with the website. So I'm just going to play this quick video and walk you through it. So this is our homepage here. And this is kind of just an overview of what we do. And then we have a 2-week free trial button here. If you want to try that. And then we just describe what we're doing here: web, design, and automation tasks. And then below that is supported platforms. So these are the platforms that we typically work with. It's not the whole limit, it's not everything, but that's the kind of more typical tasks that we're getting is with these platforms. And so then below that, we have sort of a before and after. So before, you're dealing with like all these different things, and it becomes this big spaghetti monster. And then after, you just submit everything to Work.Hero, and we do it. And we have an unlimited task offer. So we do not limit the number of tasks you can submit. We just do one at a time. And so we can talk about that a little more later, but this is how it works. This is kind of a really simple ask for a task, submit a task, get assigned a hero, and then that hero will save you. So we work with one task at a time, and you could submit 3 at a time, and you can prioritize them. And here's some testimonials. If you want to check out our website, you can go through those. And then we have our frequently asked questions. So how many tasks can I ask for? Is this service for me? I'm not sure if I want if what I want is included, and what makes you different from a virtual assistant. So we've kind of talked about some of that stuff. I'll get into the rest of it later. And now we'll move on to back to the flowchart. So, okay, so that's the website. Now we're going to go over here to what happens when someone signs up for our monthly service. So they go to the Typeform. So they go to the Typeform, and this is the technical form here. There's a design one and a technical. So it's useworkarea.com/technical, or oops, it's not playing. Either that, or you use this one if it's a design task. Either way, it goes to, we have a project manager who sorts out the tasks and assigns it to the right hero. So we're just going to go through the form. You go, this is WordPress, and then you enter your website, and then task title, the description, and then is this a task that we've already worked on? What is your username? And then your login details, and then are there any attachments? And what is the priority? So if you submitted several tasks, you could do priority 1, 2, 3, and then your email address. So we're just going to do a sample one here, and then submit. And then you get the thank you page. And so then the customer gets an email. And let's go move on back to the flowchart. So you filled out the type form, and now all that information is going up here and into our Slack. So let's go into that. Intercom and Google Spreadsheets. So this is how we organize all the tasks that come in and assign them to our team, our heroes. So the tasks come in here, and then you can see the details right here in the middle, and you can go through and see that we have everything there that we need to start the task. And then our project manager goes in and assigns it to a hero up here. And then we have canned messages here we can send. So each team member can just go into this section down here, pick out whatever the message is that needs to be sent, and then it's all populated. So it makes it really easy to work. And this is going pretty fast, so we can talk more about it after. But this makes it easy for our team members to work with customers. And then, of course, we have our emojis and our GIFs. And then once everything is done, so the hero works directly with the customer, then they send an email that says, basically we're done, and you can move on and submit more tasks, so you could submit more tasks, or just keep going on the same one if you have any changes that need to be made. So this is the spreadsheet. So everything goes to this spreadsheet. So whenever there's a task, it lands here. It has each column. So there's the name, email, the task title. So the name, email, task title, and then it lists the priority, and then the name of the hero, the person that's working on it. And then if anyone else started working on it, what time it was sent, what time it was started. And this is key because we can go back through this list and see how fast are we getting back to people. And if there's an issue, we can cover that here. We can find out what's going on, and then the time that it was finished. So we have all our data right in here, and then there's a little section for notes that you can't really see. And after that, the customer gets this email, and it says your technical. After they submit the task, they get this, and it's started, and then they can change their login. And so on this, we say our tasks take an average of 1 to 3 business days to be completed. So we don't actually quote times. We don't say, if someone sends a task and says, how fast can you do this? We can't really say, because it really depends on the complexity of the task, but we give an average of 1 to 3 business days to complete it. And usually that works out perfectly. And then, and then you can submit another login here as well. So let's move on to the next section. Okay, so we covered Intercom and Google Sheets, and now we go up to heroes. So let's go to the next section. So let's start with, because this is kind of talking about processes, let's talk about how we hire first before we get into the flowchart process here. So the sources that we use for finding heroes, team members, are Upwork, JobRack, Facebook, and referrals. And then we only go with contractors. We don't do any employees. So these are all contractors. That makes things much easier than doing any kind of employee thing. And so I basically use those 3 for finding people. And then I narrow down the field. Narrowing down the field is pretty easy. Basically, we have a range that we can pay. And if they're pretty far outside of that range, then I just eliminate them. They obviously need to have the qualifications for whatever they're doing. If it's design or development, then they need to have certain qualifications. That's pretty easy. And then, but with the salaries, we can always negotiate if it's close. If someone looks really good and it's close, we can always negotiate. I'm looking mostly, and by the way, for narrowing down the field, I'm looking for personality. I'm looking for people that have done, like, that know how to work with customers, and I can spot that pretty easily. Just a few times back and forth on email. I can kind of tell their personality. Are they lively? Are they happy? Do they want to be doing this, or is it just kind of going through the motions? So then negotiating salary, it's kind of a myth. I think people think that Upwork is, like, I've heard people say Upwork is expensive. Like, it's expensive to hire people on Upwork. But if you have certain tasks, certain jobs that you need to be done, and you can find people that are experts in those areas, a lot of times if they're not working, if they're hungry, if they don't have enough work right now, they will come down in price. So it's pretty easy to negotiate. And, you know, same with all of these, it's pretty easy to negotiate with people. So I like to find people that look, you know, like, it looks like they're really good. They have the personality, and maybe they're a little bit higher than we want to pay, but we can negotiate it down. And then if they're hungry and if they want to work for us, they express some desire to work for us, like they look at what we're doing and they go, yeah, I want to be on this team, then that's an in. That's a great start. And so then from there, so we negotiate, or we start with the salary they have, and then the salary that they're posting on their profile. And then we go to, if everything looks good, we go to a 20-minute Skype chat, and that's a text chat. I don't do any video chat or anything like that, or audio, because we only work with email and just text communication. So it doesn't make sense for me to spend time doing a lot of video chats. Although I do, once they're on board, I try to talk to each of my heroes on the team, so over video. So then we do a paid trial. So the paid trial is basically, I have like a test site that I use. It's my own personal blog, and I have them do a few tasks, usually like 2 or 3 tasks there. And mostly what I'm looking for is just kind of how the communication goes. You know, what kind of questions they ask and how fast they can do it. Like, is there any kind of like lag time for no reason or something like that? And so if the paid trial goes well, then we go through an onboarding sequence, and that consists of training materials it's written and video training that we put the new hires through, the new heroes. And so that usually takes about 2 days for them to go through all that. And then we start them off and we set them up with all the accounts, and they're good to go. And then we also have them work with the team members with any questions. Like, we kind of collaborate. So if one designer is working on something and they need help with a certain part of the design, they will contact another designer. So it's always a kind of a collaboration. It's not always, but it's often a collaboration rather than, you know, you're working with one hero, but they can also work with other team members. So this is our Slack. We have a couple of different places where we can, like in our general channel, we can send out a message and all of the heroes can see this. So if we want to change a process or update something, we'll send it out to general. And like we just did this recently where we had to make some process corrections. And so they get all the new info right away. So that's really nice. And we have people in different time zones. So it's very important that we have something, either Slack or something like that. And just to get into this a little bit more, I talk about something that with the team members that's called asynchronous communication. So if you haven't heard that, that just means that we're not expecting immediate answers all the time. I have people in all the different time zones, like many different time zones around the world. So a lot of times it takes a while to get back, but yeah, so the expectation is the key there. And then this is our Web Heroes channel. So this is where our tasks actually come in here. And then we can also talk about those tasks in here. So that gives a place for people to, or for our team members to go. Okay, so back to the flowchart. So we talked about heroes, and so that brings us to the end here. So then this $, the money is going to the heroes and to our marketing. So let's go to the next thing. So then we have our Woocommerce plugin, and that gives you an idea of how this looks. So this is where all our customers are. We can manipulate, we can put anything on hold, we can activate, we can look at where they are, like if they're on a free trial, or how many months they've been with us, or yeah, so just all the details there in the Woocommerce, which is awesome. And then so putting everything together. So, and I'm going to talk about all of our platforms, everything, all the tools that we use. So Zapier, I mentioned, we use that for everything that connects all of our systems together. It's amazing. I'm sure you guys use it, but it is just a savior for our business, especially. Trello, we keep track of the internal to-dos. And I said, and customer tasks, that's coming very soon. We are actually going to be moving from those Google Sheets to Trello to keep track of customer tasks. Google Sheets are okay. They've worked to a certain point, but Trello makes it so much easier to keep track of things. So we're going to move everything over to Trello. So not just our to-dos, but also our customer tasks, and set up kind of the same system we have on the sheets, but in a nice, clean Trello background. So then Mailchimp we use for email automation. And then coming soon, I wanted to mention this, we're going to be building a customer portal. That's something that is needed, is that customers will submit tasks, and they'll be able to see exactly where those tasks are. So they'll be able to see who they were assigned to, when it was started, where they are in the process, what tasks they've submitted in the past that have been done already, everything. So this is something that right now we're just using email, but this is coming very soon, where we'll have this portal, and it's the way we're going to build it is with Rike.com. And you can check that out later. I don't want to get into that, but it's something that you can use to sort of build like a somewhat of a portal. It's not exactly a portal, but that's the best word that I can use to describe it. It's just somewhere that customers can go, and we can go to see everything, like all the details of all the tasks. Okay, there's Mailchimp. Yeah, we have several forms on several autoresponders on Mailchimp, and we have a whole series of emails that goes out for free trial members, and then customers, and yeah. So I'm sure you guys have seen Mailchimp before. Here's our Zapier, all the different Zaps that we have there. So these are, a lot of this is Intercom, Mailchimp, and just all of our systems here, Stripe, everything. So that's about it. Thanks for watching. Our website, again, is useworkhero.com, and our Facebook is facebook.com/useworkhero. Really appreciate you watching, and yeah, thanks, Jeff, again for having me on, and let's do some Q&A.
Okay, and we're back with Kevin. So Kevin, I think that was really interesting to see how you built the business. It was cool to see your inside of what you're doing, your technology stack, how things work. And I noticed there's a lot of overlap with how I've built out my business as well. But then there's also things that I haven't considered yet. So I have a lot to marinate on as well.
Yeah, that was all done overnight, by the way. We figured that all out like in the last couple of days. So just kidding. It's taken a long time, actually, because at first we actually didn't have that much technology going on, and we were doing a lot of stuff manually. And the whole point of our business is we're helping other businesses with their processes and taking their work away. And then here we are, like, doing everything ourselves. And so it's been over the course of many months that this has kind of come together. And like I said in one of the slides, I talked about one of the things that we're actually changing something, because we're using Google Spreadsheets for some of the tracking, and that has taken us to a certain point, but now we've definitely outgrown that, and we're implementing a new system, which I can't really say much about because it's just this week we started to put it into place, but I know it's going to be much easier for everybody and much better. So. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that's a good evolution. And it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, Google Sheets or spreadsheet in general is like the starting point for all of us. Most businesses start out as a spreadsheet or business ideas or processes or whatever, and that's how we keep track of things. And then eventually you find that the tools that help you expand, and that's usually the order that I recommend doing things as well. You want a cheap, easy to manipulate proof of concept, and so Sheets can get you there. And then we talk about project management systems like Trello. I use Asana, and that's really where you can get a lot more done. And that happened to me this week too. I was working on some resource management things, and I started out proving it out in Excel, and I was like, this is a disaster because there's no dimensionality to Excel. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's just rows of data. You really need a relational database or a relational system if you want to run a good business long term, or if you want the business to be automated. Because otherwise, if there's no dimensions to it, if it's just a flat file of some sort or just a spreadsheet, it's easy to, it doesn't, it needs to be 4D. You need to run a 4D business. You can't run a 2D business like running out of a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've worked with businesses that have that sort of situation where they're just working the 2D, and it's almost like the joke is like, they must just be literally passing around like a spreadsheet to check things off and to write things down. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's fine to do that, but it's fine to do that right away, right? But then it takes a, like, once you have multiple cooks in the kitchen who are potentially corrupting the file, or who are trying to say, "Are you in this?" Then that's when you need to start looking at something that's a little bit more enterprise level.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's cool. And I think that people have some technology questions and as they come along, but I think that we all build out our own technology stacks, and usually it's, you want to find a piece of technology that enhances what you're already doing, as opposed to finding the perfect tool. And so that's probably the reason why you've decided on Trello and I've decided on Asana. It's just those things fit our needs in the ways that we want them to fit. Or we made a choice and that's what we're sticking with because we're stubborn. Either way, that's, ultimately there's a million tools out there that do that type of stuff. It's just which one you're most comfortable with. So, and what I wanted to talk about next was, when you talk about your heroes, which is your contract resources who are working on making and fulfilling the tasks. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that it seems like people can take on, like, if you have somebody come into your ecosystem, they're able to field a question that comes in, respond to it, and sort of take on the entire responsibility for the project. Is that how it goes? How does it work when somebody becomes one of your heroes? They basically are the single point of contact for the customer.
Yeah, that's close. That's part of it. So so they let's take it from when a customer submits a task.
Mm-hmm.
So the task goes into the system, and it starts with, we have someone that sort of oversees all the tasks and makes sure that they go to the right heroes or team members. And so then that way, when they start out, it's like, is this a design project or is this more of a technical project? And then they go to a specific hero, and then that hero is working directly with the customer from then on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still somebody that's overseeing the whole the task or the set of tasks that are being submitted. So it's not really a project manager. It's sort of like a project manager, but they're not necessarily going back and forth with the customer. It's just making sure that everything is going the way it should. And then if someone else needs to join in, like we may start with one hero working directly with the customer, and then they may need help with one particular part of the task, and then someone else comes in. So it's not necessarily just like one hero managing everything. It's like we have it usually works out to where it is a one-on-one situation where you as the customer come in and you end up working with one person. But especially if you have different types of tasks, you have some design tasks, some technical tasks, you're definitely going to have two or more people that you're working with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yep. So, and that's part of the value you can provide, right? Is becoming a one-stop shop. They don't really need to know that there's other people working on it or that things are changing around. They just know that it's going to get done. And that seems like that's where the customer success type role really, really shines in that area. And one of the questions I had, but you actually answered it in the presentation, but as you were going through it, I wrote it down, and that is, how do you know that somebody's competent? Like there's all these workplaces out there, and there's hundreds of thousands of people who can do these things or say they can do these things. You said that some of it's communication, and you can instinctively know if they're going to put the effort into it. And I would agree with that. If somebody communicates well, that usually is how they carry themselves. Like, so if it's somebody's brilliant but they can't communicate, that's pretty much what you're going to get. If somebody communicates well but might not be brilliant, that's what you're going to get. And so you can sort of see through, just in how they communicate. But I've also had many people that I've worked with that I've hired that sounded good in the interview, and then they couldn't really deliver. And so that it seems like some of it's instinct, some of it's this trial piece you do. Share some more about the trying somebody out, the paid trial.
Yeah. So for me, I'd say it's about 70% of it is that communication in the interview. and then I can look at all their, I can look at their resume and see like what they've done, and look at some of their projects that they've worked on. But yeah, I'd say most of it is that. And then we put them through a trial that is just to see their competency. And that, for me, that's more about like how fast they're doing it. What kinds of questions are they asking? And do they wait for a while to ask a question? Or, because that's one of the issues that comes up, is that sometimes people, they don't want to appear like they don't know what they're doing. So they wait a really long time, and then 3 days later, oh, I didn't know how to do this, so blah blah. And it's like, okay, that's not what we need here. So that's definitely a big thing that I look for. I'm not giving them like overly complex tasks in the trial. It's very simple things but they're typical things that come up with our customers. So so that's kind of how it works. And then with the just going back to the communication, I look for, does it seem like they're trainable? Like if they have like some spelling errors or something, that's something that we can probably work with. But if it's like overall they have like a bad attitude, it's probably not going to work. But we do also provide some training on communication. And I'm a big fan of something called nonviolent communication. It's a book. There's a book, and it's people refer to it as NVC. And so it's basically a way to empathize with people instead of immediately going to like who's right and who's wrong and who can I blame and that kind of thing. You go instantly into empathy. And you go, okay, what is that? So we teach a little bit of that in our training when we bring a hero on board. And so therefore that way they don't instantly think that, even for themselves, like not necessarily the customer, but for themselves, like, oh, I did something wrong, that's bad, and then they're worried about it. It's like, no, this is something that you can empathize with yourself and say, okay, well, how can I do better? And then we can point out and say, hey, just a friendly reminder, this is what you did, and this is what, how we do things. And it just makes it a lot easier, and it makes it so that we don't have to, the interview process, I think, is actually easier because you find those people, and when you found one, that they have the skills, you can train, and they can learn this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the approach I always take too. Is I'd rather have quality over quantity, and you get what you pay for, essentially. Like if somebody's, or if, we're in a place now where a lot of people want to do a lot of people want the work, or they want the freedom. They're on these freelancing systems. If you can find the right ones, it's 5 times better than having to go back to the drawing board and trying to find people over and over again that might fit the bill. You really want to get the right people there.
Right. And just to add one more thing, Batty, I mean, I said it in the video, but it's really important that they're hungry. Like if they got a full schedule and they're like, I've got like 5 hours a week I could spend on your thing, that's never going to be a fit. At least for us, that's not going to be a fit. But if they're like, no, I have nothing going on, but I'm super, like, I need this job, I need it, and I'm motivated, and I'll work hard, and they actually want to work for our company. Like they say, oh, I think what you're doing is really interesting, something like that, then, that's the perfect fit.
Yeah, for sure. So what type of tasks do you give them? Do you give them like real world, real client stuff, or is it like in a dummy environment where they can't break anything? Or is that part of the proof that they have to be able to log into a system and make updates and everything?
Yeah, so I mostly use my personal website. It's freedomlovin.com. It's just a blog. And I'm not too worried about anyone messing anything up.
Yeah.
That's never happened yet, so knock on wood. But I give them things that I need done. Like I need to replace my logo. So like just replace the logo. This page doesn't look right for this reason. The favicon isn't working. Like these just pretty basic things that I think that it'll show me what their skill level is and how well they do.
Nice. How long do you have these people on the hook then? Is it full time that you're working with them once you hire them on? Do you guarantee them a certain amount of hours? Because the one thing that I find is difficult is that if you bring somebody on and you can't, either if you train somebody, you want all their time, right? Since you're investing in the training, you want as much of that. But I think a lot of people who are on the agency course program aren't necessarily sure they want to take on full time, right? They want to do things eased in. So do you ease these people in? Do you guarantee them a certain amount of work? How does that part factor in?
Yeah, right now I can't guarantee anybody any number of hours because it's very inconsistent. So we'll have really busy times and then it'll get really slow. So we may need like a bigger team at some point, and then at another point we only need a few people. So yeah, there is this balance that always has to be struck, and that's something that I've had to learn that it's, I need to hire enough people to handle the work we have coming in, but not too many, because then you have people that are kind of waiting around for work. So far, I mean, my team that I have now, everybody's happy with the hours they're getting. And so I'd like to get to the point where I can say, okay, you'll get 15 hours a week, you'll get 20 hours a week when you start with us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not there yet. But I do talk about how that is the goal. Like, that's our goal, is to get you to the point where you're a part-time salaried contractor.
Yep. Yeah, that's not so. And does that help? Like, do people drop off then at some point along the way? Do you have to, how do you keep them engaged if they're not working as consistently? Because that's always one of the concerns is, do you build the infrastructure and get the clients in there, or do you build the clients and then build the infrastructure afterwards? I like your approach as far as cautious, as far as actually having the process in there and you can get up to speed. That's part of where I was so impressed when we first talked, was you're like, hey, I can get somebody and plug somebody in right away, and I can handle this a lot easier than most businesses can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, we start with just having barely enough heroes for the team to handle the work, and then as soon as people start to get overwhelmed, then I'm getting the next person in there. So I go through that interview process. Doesn't take that long, so I can, within a few days, I can usually find somebody, get them on the team, and get them going and working.
That's pretty great. I mean, that's very rare that a business can plug a hole within a week, right? It's actually only happened to me once in my history of of being an agency owner, and it was just a fluke.
It isn't easy. So what happens is that I spend most of my time actually doing the recruiting, doing the interviewing, and doing all that. I don't want to do this forever. I mean, this isn't something that I'm like, I don't want to be the HR director for my company.
Yeah.
But right now, that's a lot of what I do, because it's we're either bringing in new business or we're doing the customer service. So it's like, I have to make sure we have really good people. So that's like my, probably half the time I'm spending doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So how do you get around that? Like, what's the plan to get around that? I mean, one of the things that I was interested in that you talked about in the video was like the videos in written training, and how you have this process where basically they interview well, that's 70%. They pass a test, that's 30%. Now you're taking them into the program and you're giving them almost 2 whole days of training, which is a generous amount, but it's also, it doesn't seem like too much or too little. It seems like the right amount. How do you, and then you have them going there. What's the process like for this training piece, the getting them up to speed? Do you just, if you ever solve a problem, do you just record a video on it and then add it to the list of things they should do?
Not exactly. It's kind of training just put together over what we see all the time with tasks coming in. And it's a series, like I said, a series of written and video training. And then we do actually have little quizzes. So they have to take these little quizzes. They're not like super difficult. It's not like taking SAT or something, but it's just to make sure that they're getting it. And then, that's really it. And then I'm kind of just going with like, okay, they watched everything, they read everything, and let's go. And they're probably going to make some little mistakes here and there, but it's never like huge things. It's usually like the little things like, hey, you didn't capitalize that letter or something like that. Those are the things that I'm usually seeing. But.
Yeah. Interesting. So, okay, that's good. And then you update these things in real time. You're showing inside of Slack, and one of the messages is like, basically, hey, I updated our documents to show this. Like, how does that work out? Pretty well to update things, and how do you have that discipline? Because usually what I found is in a pure agency, like the agency that I have ran for years, like basically you're so putting out fires left and right that the thought of like reflecting on the fire you just put out it's very difficult, and it's not something that most agency owners will do. Versus, I think you're more of like a productized service, right? So it's like a service that you do, and part of being a productized service is having that dedicated role to doing that. So is it part of it just the model that you're doing it? Is it part of it the way that you're staffed? How does that part factor in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely a big part of it is I do have a business partner. And so we have kind of different roles. He's actually down in Brazil, and he is doing like a lot of this kind of back end work, like that exact thing where
Yeah.
like we had a little bit of a problem like 2 weeks ago, and it was like there was a couple of tasks that slipped, and that should never happen. And that's our whole business, is doing tasks. So we had a couple of tasks that slipped. Like one was like 5 days, and nobody had responded. And I'm like, okay, this clearly this is our. I mean, we could point fingers and blame and all that, but it's us as the management,
Yeah. Yeah.
as the management. This is our totally on us. So we have to just totally change the system, because it's not that's a hole in our system. So he will go to work on that like right away. And so I'm not, I'm not digging into that stuff, but I'm still seeing, the problems, and then we can send it out to everybody and get it sort of implemented together. But yeah, that's a big part of it, is having a partner that can just jump on something like that and get it done.
Yeah. And I think I would assume that having some kind of accountability system or some kind of tracking system can be very beneficial to knowing things. Like, so for example, we have Help Scout for our customer support. So anytime that somebody asks anything or responds to an email, anything, it goes to this centralized system, and then you can at least tell what's in there. And then it goes to a Slack notification where anytime that somebody responds to us, it goes to a Slack channel, and then it stays as a support ticket that we can respond to, and whoever's there. But you're right, sometimes we're almost always within 24 hours. And then sometimes we'll have, like right now, actually, as I'm recording this should be in the past by the time that people watch this, but we updated one of our courses. We said, do you want us to send you an email with a new one? And they said yes. And so we have 50 support tickets saying yes. And a lot of people are emailing us back and saying, well, did you add us or not? Because we haven't responded to them yet, because we realized that we had a broken process. We told them we were going to do this, and then we didn't have the ability to deliver on it. Right. And obviously some of these things you work through, but then also you're right. If you have somebody who's dedicated to it as part of the business, or you at least have some kind of tracking tool, then you can say, oh crap, this went on for way longer than it should. Let's not ever do this again. And I think sometimes that's the best you can really ask for as a business owner, because otherwise, again, until you reach a certain saturation point, there's not enough work to have somebody whose job is just to hit refresh on your ticketing system to see how long it's been since somebody responded. Like that person just has to roll up their sleeves and respond at a certain point. And so it's good to know that other people go through that, but also you're right, it's a role definition, right? And that comes down to, this is somebody's role to do that. And when you assign accountability, whether they're a business partner or if they're a contractor, the accountability comes down to, this is the buck stops here. You're the one who needs to do this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's something that it's difficult. I mean, I actually don't have a business partner in my business. And so it's like trying to instill that into the rest of your team is in having people have the same pride as if they were a business owner. Those are things that are, that is something that it's fluid, right? You have to really try and work. And that's part of that attitude you're talking about, is, somebody who takes ownership of something, even if they're not an owner in name, right? Those people are rare.
Yeah.
But when you find them, they're much more productive, because they handle things how they want it to be handled for themselves. They have that personal pride they put into it. And that's any business needs that, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that early on we had part of our business is hiring people at the lowest possible cost, so that, our profit margin, we can work it out and we can actually make a profit. And so early on, it was like some of the people I was hiring, I realized afterwards that I just was looking at that low dollar per hour figure, and it was not the right attitude. I mean, good, solid workers, they didn't not show up or not do things, but didn't have exactly what you just said, caring as if it's their own business. It wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and especially if their work isn't as consistent, or if there's all kinds of different factors that go into it.
Yeah.
But it also it ends up becoming like a key to growth, right? Because that's the hard part, is most people who run a professional service business, it's so high touch that going from 1 to 2 clients is difficult, or adding more staffing up is difficult. And so that's why I wanted you to go through your stack, because it's a similar way to how I'm able to handle things with my business as well. And so we don't necessarily have a dedicated customer service person, but we have enough people that can understand how to do it, that we rarely have bottlenecks in customer service. And if something happens where we're doing a promotion or we have a bunch of stuff coming in, then people roll up the sleeves and pitch into doing it. And it works that way. But if you don't have the tracking system, if you don't have the communication method, then it can be really difficult to pull off. So when you talk about, we both run our business off of Woocommerce. We both accept payments through credit cards, or I do Stripe and PayPal. You said you do Stripe in yours. We both use Slack as our internal communication tool because email is terrible. I do intake of things because like a Slack channel is endemic to your organization, right? So it's like people who are on there, that it's Signal, it's no noise because people aren't going to spam you on Slack. Although that does happen sometimes with big companies. The general channel is just like animated GIFs. That's not how Slack should be used.
Right.
But then like I use Typeform for intake, right? Like you intake things, and I use Zapier to sort of connect all the tissue as well. And that's basically how a modern business works, right? But it's not. The funny thing is that it doesn't have to be for a productized service. It doesn't have to be for an information product like what I have. It can be for professional services too. It's just, you have to adapt it to the unique situation you're working in. Do you have any ideas on how you might is there a difference between just pure agency or consulting where you have these retainer clients who are coming in? Do you think that this method would work for retainer clients who are, say, they want to know something that they want to make changes to a PPC campaign, or they want to do things that are, they want to control the direction? Do you think that like some kind of system like this would work? Maybe that's not a very clear question. I don't know.
No. Yeah. No, I could see that definitely working. Like, I guess just to turn around, like, what do you think would be the downside of using a system like this?
I think it's perception. So if I made a client who's paying me $10,000 a month or $2,000 a month, whatever your minimum is for the thing, you're talking about a service that's in the hundreds, right?
Yeah.
Versus like an agency. My agency's minimum contract is like $10,000 a month.
Right.
And so having a help desk for a $10,000 a month client where they have to submit something to you, or they're getting a support, they're coming to a support email address, it cheapens the value of the expensive high-end service.
Right.
And so that was something that we always, it's like, how do you make it like the white glove treatment that is worthy of a lot of money, a ton of money, yet use the efficiency tools that are out there. And how do you do it in a way that the client isn't just that they think it's great. They don't think that it's, a problem, but it's great. So I think it's actually in the front end collection. People want it when they pay a lot of money, they want to talk to a human, and they want to feel like they're treated as a one-to-one. They want to feel like it. So that's the thing. It's more of like a collection on the front end. I think that it can cheapen things, although there's ways you can program your help desk software that people don't even know they're submitting to a help desk, right? It can be like an email address or a catch-all email or something like that, where they don't even know that they're being treated that way.
Right. And we have a position that I kind of described it a little bit earlier, where it's kind of like a project manager, but it's more of like a concierge.
Yeah.
And even that word, it almost sounds like, oh, it's a concierge. I have my own concierge. And she's kind of just making sure that things, like making sure everyone gets everything on time and nothing falls through the cracks. And so she does send emails out to customers directly on occasion. It's not every time, but that is part of when you say it's like, the $10,000 a month customer that's submitting the ticket and then they're waiting, I think it's a little bit, the way we do it, it's a little more, what is it called? Touch when you have that concierge, and you can kind of feel like, okay, they know what they're doing. This person's working directly with me. This person's making sure that everything's, so it is, we still have to, have that back end system of like, okay, here's all the tasks and where are they? But I think it's a little bit more than just like that, like a cheap, waiting for some customer service rep to get back to you.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that it can be that way. And the other thing is, it's more of the human effect. So it doesn't have to be a human. It can be a machine that makes it feel human. Yeah. One of the other big thing about the type of business that I've run for a long time is that clients get communication through video calls. It's not necessarily on video, but screen share stuff. A lot of screen share, a lot of conference calls, that type of activity that happens. And just getting those things scheduled, so do you use a scheduling app to make that work? How do you get somebody on the docket so they're getting that touch, the high touch, the FaceTime? Because that is it's a big value proposition to have FaceTime where you can talk to somebody and you can schedule your time in front of them. So I think you could use process to get that out of the way too at an agency as well. I think
Oh,
agencies
for
are
sure.
often overscheduled though. So they I don't know, but when during the peak of my agency days, I didn't have an hour to spare,
Yeah.
between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. There was not an hour free. It was just overscheduled. So
Right, right. Yeah, for what I'm doing right now, I'm actually talking to. I always have a call with anyone that signs up, any customer that signs up. I always have a call with them. Often it's hard to schedule that call
Mhm.
because everyone's busy, but that's something that I don't know how long that's going to be sustainable. Maybe 6 months from now, when we're just flooded with customers, I'm gonna have to figure out another process for that.
Yep. Yeah. That's yeah. I think again, this is part of owning a business. Is that even if you figure something out and you have a major breakthrough, there's 10 more breakthroughs that need to happen in order to go through it. Because
Yeah,
is now and this is the thing. Do you build a system to handle 1,000 customers when you don't have 1,000 customers and just
right.
be ready for it, or do you build 1,000 customers with no systems and then try to fix that later on? And
Yeah,
I've done the opposite of you. I mean, we've built a business with tons of customers and revenue and didn't have systems in place, and it's a
yeah.
disaster. It's really difficult to fix that. But at the same time, you're not going to be in business very long, right? If you don't have the stream of things coming in. So I think that it really is a chicken before the egg type thing.
Yeah, that book, Work the System, it really got me going. When I read that a couple of years ago, I was like, this is the way it needs to be. Like, there's no other way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk some more about Work Hero because we're running out of time. So I want to
Yep.
make sure we talk about it and then we'll wrap up. So what type of projects are you taking on? Just to be clear, I know you went through it on the demo of your website, but like what's your bread and butter project that you'd want to take on for somebody?
So when you say projects, do you mean like what kind of tasks are being
Yeah, yeah.
submitted?
So I mean, if
Yeah.
somebody signs up for your service, like what are you going to be doing for them?
Yeah. So, and it's the reason I want to clarify that is that people do sometimes think that they can submit a project to us,
Hmm.
and we actually don't. We won't work a project, but we'll do tasks. So
Okay. Yeah.
if they do that, they can break it down into smaller tasks. So we kind of consider a task something that's like maybe about an hour or less that one of our heroes can finish. So yeah, a typical task would be like on the WordPress side of it. It's like people always have issues with plugins. A lot of times it's just moving things around the website. They don't want to mess it up, so they want us to do it. Updating their security, updating anything to do with like landing pages, like all the different, like someone wants to build a landing page, we can help them with that, with all the different technical parts of that, and that means like lead pages, optimized press, those kind of
Hmm.
things. And then on the design side, the projects are just totally varied. I mean, it could be ads that they're running. It could be like Facebook banners, Facebook promos. We have some agencies that are continually, they have to update, even just for their own business. They're continually doing like weekly like Facebook lives and things like that, where they need graphics all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, so stuff like that, and we don't really limit it too much on. We say it's unlimited tasks, so you can submit an unlimited amount of tasks, and that gets confusing for some people because they go, well, how do you do that, right? Like, how do you do unlimited uh, tasks for people? Well, we do. You can submit as many tasks as you want, and so we
Hmm.
do them one at a time. And so
Yeah.
we'll take one task, finish it, and then some of the tasks, we can do in an hour. Sometimes a task can take a little bit longer because there's back and forth.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
bring in more than one person. It just depends, and it also depends on how clearly it's explained. Like if they can, when they send in the task, if they explain it really clearly, and sometimes people do send us Loom videos, which is awesome because
Yeah.
that seems to help a lot, and then we can do it quickly. But then if they're very vague about it and they're like, kind of expecting us to be magicians, then it might take a few
Yeah.
more days.
That's interesting. So for example, one of the things that we're talking about is we want to at Jeffalytics, and as I work on my new website, which might even be out at the time that people see this, uh, having more customized headers. For example, like if we're doing a blog post, I want to have it look like a custom animation. Now that's design versus animation and stuff like that. But one thing we're looking for is a service that, or somebody that we can go to, and it's like, hey, here's our post. We're talking about this thing, this feature in Google, this, whatever the topic is. Can you create a graphic for us that's like our header that looks highly custom and it's out there? Is that something that you might be able to do, or is that something that's a little bit more outside, like more of like you have to just find a designer?
And did you say that is animation, or?
It would be like a custom illustration. Illustration is what I'd say, not animated, illustrated.
Yeah, that's definitely something we could do.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's.
And I think that's a really nice value. I mean, whatever the price is, right? Just to know that there's somebody you can go to, and that you don't have to go and source the talent to do it. You can say, hey, I just need another one of these things, because that's really where my stuff shines. It's like, hey, once we do a proof of concept, I'm usually the one to do a proof of concept. Then I find somebody to scale it, and that's how most businesses go. It's like, we want to do this thing. You do it one time, and then you say, okay, well, here's the sentiment. Here's the next things we're doing. Go to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if just as far as our service goes, our prices are actually lower than if you hired a full-time designer from somebody, like a full-time VA from some of the less expensive parts of the world. So and we do that, we can do that stuff like on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, I think I might become a customer soon too, because that's nice. Exactly what I need. And I mean, part of the reason why we're talking is because I was really fascinated by the process that you use. And I know that people in the agency course community, some people are web developers. They have projects that they do. Some of you who are watching this have different agencies that do PPC analytics, and you might get clients asking you to do something. And then the question is always, do you say yes to the client asking you to do something without being sure that you're going to be able to deliver on it? Which is usually, I don't recommend that. Do you say no and then have them go and try to find somebody else, and that other person could take over your stranglehold with the client? They could sort of work their way into it. Or do you bring on a trusted partner or some kind of, task oriented person that can get it done? And I like your distinction between a project and a task, because a project, if you might not want to manage a project, or maybe you're already doing projects for your clients. Well, if there's just a task they want you to do, but you're not competent in it, this would be a good fit. If there's something that they want you to do that you just don't have, it's not consistent enough that you want to bring on a full-time team. Because honestly, like at my agency, we turned down web development for 5 years. And we said, no, we don't do any web development, no graphic design, no pretty picture stuff. That's not us. And then eventually we got so many requests for it that we brought it in-house. And that's not a cheap task. If you want to bring it in-house with salaried employees that come into your physical location, then that's going to be to build out a full team that can do what you guys do with full-time employees. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do that. Or do you say, do you sign up for something and offer and take it as it comes? I think that's really the way to do it until there's a saturation, until you have such a saturation point where you make a decision as to whether you want to bring it in-house or not. But at this price point, like you said, and if you can do it in a repeatable manner, then I don't know when that would ever be a value proposition to actually bring it in-house.
Yeah, that would be, that definitely would be tough, especially if you're living in the US and you have to pay the US salaries.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely, it's expensive. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So how long do you retain your clients for? Do they work with you ongoing? Do they do a few months at a time? How long does that work for?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had kind of all the above. We've had people that have been with us for 6 months. I mean, this is a new business. So, and then we've had people that come in for a month, and then they get everything done that they need, and then they leave. And we basically only have one flat fee. It's a monthly. I don't know if I should say how much it is.
Yeah, it's probably gonna change, so you don't need to say it. Yeah.
Okay.
You can say in the range.
Yeah, it's a flat monthly fee, and then if people want to pay for a whole year, then there's a discount. But yeah. So and we've had, like I said, kind of all the above, and we want people to stay, but it's like sometimes it almost doesn't even make sense. It's like, we did most of what you want to do, or all of what you want to do, and you've been with us for 2 months, so. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And then they can come back later. And anyone can quit anytime. We don't have any contracts. So it's like you can do a couple months and then, stop for a couple months, come back later. I mean, it totally works.
Great. Yeah, so I think that just summarizing the sweet spot is if you're interested in doing something like this, then Kevin's a good resource for you to talk to, and there's a lot to be gained from having process, and just think about how long it would take any of us to get up to speed with a resource versus how long it takes you guys to. There's something to be said for that, to really be able to sift through it, but it does become almost a full-time job just doing that, right? So like if you're saying that half your time's doing HR, that's a gotcha that we all have to worry about. But that doesn't get any less if you're doing it with full-time employees in an office.
Right.
I think about 20 to 30% of my time was always recruiting as I
Mhm.
was running my agency, and so it is a big piece of the pie. And a lot of times it's hours that go on after the actual work gets done. So it's not your best hours doing that
Yeah.
a lot of times.
Sometimes I question what is actual work. So I'm always going, well, I'll get to my actual work as soon as I can get this done. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, but that's the reality of scaling a business, is that you don't usually get to do the fun stuff, the stuff that you like.
yeah,
You have to make some sacrifices to scale. And then as far as if they don't want to have anything to do with this stuff, or if they're in a completely different unrelated area, like if they're doing PPC and they need landing pages developed, like is a landing page a task? Like, hey, develop a page for me on WordPress and just make a clone of this one and then update some stuff. Here's the copy, that type of stuff. Would somebody be able to do that pretty easily?
yeah. I mean, it's much better if they could break it down and say exactly, this step one, we need this done. Step two, we need this done. We have had people submit like that, like, hey, I need a landing page, and here's a couple of bullet points, and that's more of a project.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be more of a project than a task because it's not broken down into like step by step. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's totally doable. And we can work, with anybody and kind of teach them how to send in the tasks the way that it's going to be the most efficient. So
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction that I'm thinking about, and that is, I think that's one of the values of working with a full service agency is because they basically they build out the project plan and they build that all out, and that's where a lot of the expense goes. Like the difference between hundreds of dollars a month to do something and thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands ultimately is the layer of middle people between who's doing the task and when it gets done. And so
right,
if you're going right to the task person, that's going to be the least expensive you're going to pay. And actually it might even be less expensive going directly to the resource, but you're going to get you're going to get less organization if you go directly to resource, right? Then if you go to a
yeah,
service like you have, then you're going to have more of an organization ability, more redundancy, less points of failure. And then if you go to the next level out, and that's to a niche agency that does these things, but needs you to, you say, hey, I'm doing PPC, build a landing page for me. Then they'll source the copy, they'll source the images, they'll do all
right,
that stuff, and that's gonna be in the thousands to get that done, right? And then and
yeah,
then and then if you get into the I want this thing, just do it for me, but it needs to adhere to my brand standards. You
mm-hmm.
need to involve my team. You need to work with my content management system. You need to do all these things. That's tens of thousands and above as
right,
you get to that point. And the reason the difference between them is simply how organized the person asking for the task is.
yeah.
The more you cut out the middle person, the more you can go to that thing. The less it's going to cost you, but also the more work that you put into preparing it. Frankly, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm really glad we're recording this because I can play that back to people and show them how
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
done.
No, and that is what it is. And actually every type of business in this area can be profitable. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I teach in agency course, tying it all together, is that if you're the subcontracted resource, like if we're outsourcing to you, then if you want to be profitable, or if somebody wants to be profitable subcontracting to you, they should be charging 4 times what you charge.
Right.
That's my general rule of thumb, is that labor cost should be 25% of the overall cost you put into the project.
Yeah.
And so if it's in the hundreds, then 4 times that might be a reasonable amount to mark it up. But the markup isn't just like pure profit. It's not like you get 75% profit off of it. You have to pay for your project management, the cost of sale, the
Mm-hmm.
cost of service, your overhead of your company. So it's not like it's just it's not pure profit. But
Right.
when people don't factor in their cost of sale, they don't factor in all these different aspects that go into running a business. They think that if you're charging $1,000 and they can sell it to somebody for 1,500, they think that's $500 in profit. It is
Right.
not. They
Right.
actually end up losing usually $500 to $1,000 because they're not equipped. They don't charge for their own time. They don't charge. They don't factor in taxes. They don't factor in any of these things that actually go into the margins of a business. And so
Yeah.
I always say, if you're using an outsourced resource, you need to make 4 times that basically in order for it to be into your profit model. And then if you're the one who is being the outsourced one, then you need to either consider your pricing to the point where your all in price is what makes you profitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you provide this thing, you shouldn't be giving this thing away to get, unless it's just a market share grab. You shouldn't be giving it away. You should be making your service profitable and then letting them sell it at their profitable level, right? So
Yeah.
knowing, hey, whatever they want to do with it. And so it works both ways. The service provider shouldn't sacrifice anything. So for example, if you talked about hiring resources and you're saying a lot of times when you started out, it was going for the cheapest person possible, right? They're like, what's the cheapest hourly rate or task-based rate? Well, when that's fine, and as long as the numbers match up, but you again should be making 4 times what you're paying that person at least in order for your business to be profitable. And
Right.
that's ultimately how you know that your business will be profitable at scale, even though it's a relatively new business. It comes down to being able to know that your labor cost is manageable. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, the lower the percentage of labor cost that it goes into providing a professional service, the more you can guarantee that you're profitable. And that's all that it comes down to, is that if you
Yeah.
keep your expenses low, human expenses, which is the largest expense hands down that goes into all this stuff, then you will be profitable. There's no way you can't be. Because
Right.
even if you spend on Zapier, even if you buy the most expensive project management tool or the most expensive email tool, the most expensive everything, all that stuff, that's like 1 month of human costs. Even if 1 year of the most expensive tool is 1 month of human costs, no matter
Yeah.
what type of resource you're working with. And so that's the thing that we all have to realize, is that everybody needs to, if you want to have a successful business, this doesn't mean that you can be a successful freelancer without heeding this advice. You can be successful in other ways. But if you want your business to be successful, you need to have these things in proportion.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I don't know how much to add to that, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, good. And that's the whole point of this program and the agency course program is to really let people know that they need to think about these things, even though it's difficult, even though it's hard, and ultimately it all comes down to a numbers game at some point in time. And the hardest part is not really knowing, the leap of faith that those numbers are going to come into line when you're a 6-month-old business, or when your
Yeah.
business is on the process of growing, or when you're the only one. And do you charge for your own time into that 25%? Those are all questions that people that you should have. And so I would definitely encourage people who are watching this to leave me your questions, and leave questions for Kevin as well, and I'll get them to you so you can respond to them as well. But I
Awesome.
would encourage people to let me know, like, to say, is this right? Because that's really where the value comes in this overall agency course program.